there, and this is the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 91. Chris S. is a Toys R Us kid. Recorded live Sunday, May 26th. I hate you guys. 2024. As I said, I'm Christopher Spera, the editor-in-chief over at iTechGear.org. Joining us this week, the author and master craftsman of that wonderful title, the owner of the Dulcet Tones, a former contributing editor over at Gear Diary Pocket now, and of course, editor over here at iTechGear.org, Mr. Chris Gavula. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. That's the least I could do for you. You know,
after all of the grief I've given you,
the very least I could do. No.
Yes, over the last three or so seasons. So
yeah, no kidding. But
and fast coming up to marking,
wow, 4
seasons.
4
whole years.
I'm enjoying being back. For those who didn't know, I had some eye surgery recently, and can see better now. So it's a wonderful thing, and I'm enjoying all of this.
Well, the rain is gone, isn't it?
The rain is the clouds are gone anyway.
well, but you can see.
At least you can see the clouds now.
You can see clearly now.
I can see clearly now.
But
that's very true.
Thank you. And
oh my goodness,
those other borrowed Dulcet Tones, the former co-owner of WUGNET Publications, and the one, the only Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin. How are you, sir?
I am just fine, peachy. At least I'm not having bad weather like Chris Gavula is. That looked awful when you showed that on the radar.
Oh, it was. That's some nasty stuff.
And we have that. And we've been having that at least once or twice a week for the last couple months. So
yep. All is well in Tennessee.
Well, at least it is somewhere.
Well, most all.
And last but certainly never, ever least, the former contributing writer over at Gear Diary and now editor over here at iTechGear.org and the current host of the Linux Link Tech Show and Living in the Retro Arcade podcast, Brother Joe McLaughlin. How are you, sir?
I am doing just fine. Just had a good day planning a hike for tomorrow since it's Memorial Day.
It's Memorial Day.
Thank you to all the servicemen who gave the ultimate sacrifice.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed my 20 years.
Absolutely. And we thank you for those, by the way. And I just want to say thank you, Joel, for bringing that up. I just want to say as a quick brief aside, I am in awe of everyone. I was never able to accept the honor of serving for our great country. My arthritis and my asthma would have fore after me right out of any kind of draft or any sort of selective service selection for me. But I stand in awe of everyone who has served for any of our armed services. Those who are first responders, policemen, firemen, EMTs. I mean, you guys are just the best.
I even want to throw teachers into that mix,
Mm-hmm.
Well, they all have if we're going to be laying the kudos around, I would say yes, teachers
and nurses and all that kind of thing.
Teachers and nurses and doctors. You guys,
it's all these service people, right?
It's
all
amazing
service
stuff. People, but this one is specifically for armed service members and their families, and those who, like Joel said, gave the ultimate sacrifice and gave their life in service and protection of this great country. And I can't tell you how much I am in awe of you. So thank you to you and your families for everything that you have and are doing. Mm-hmm. You have done, you are doing for us and all of the citizens here in the United States. So thank you. And speaking of iPad Pro screens,
were we?
Well, not really, but
segue. That's the crappiest segue you've done in a long time.
Thank you. But speaking of iPad OLED screens, some of them are a little bit grainy, on the grainy side, from an M4 perspective, right? The newer ones, aren't they, Larry, Joel? I mean, you guys are looking at these, right?
Well, I'm certainly the proud owner of this problem, but I don't know.
I just have to chuckle a little bit because it is a brand new technology.
Yeah, and you shouldn't buy new things, I guess. But I mean, I didn't.
I'm also saying that. Well, there you go. There's that too. But this looks like it might be something that just can't be fixed with a software update. Is my thinking. I
Well,
hope
that
I'm
could-
wrong.
I do too. I
I'm
went
not-
when before I bought mine. I went to the Apple store and looked at it, and I didn't notice anything. Of course, my eyes are horrid. And when the problem came out, out came the magnifying glass, and I'm looking at it, and I went, "Oh yeah, you got it." But aside from the fact that I have the problem, according to all the articles I'm reading, the opinions on this seem quite divided. Those who
Yeah.
don't have the new iPad Pro they're the ones yammering from the sidelines. Oh, let's give Apple a chance to fix it. It's not a big deal. It's just a few little wavy lines. We can barely see them. But for those of us who shelled out big bucks and waited for an eternity on this puppy to arrive, we're singing a different tune. Like, what the what?
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm telling you, that can be said for most of the folks that actually buy that new
Yeah.
equipment. Those early adopters.
Apple's not supposed to do this. Come on, guys.
But the interesting thing is, guys, when I read the comment lines on a lot of these stories, not everybody who's got one is having it or noticing it. So I don't know if it's a manufacturing
Well, that's
problem
usually the case
what
with
it
all
is,
their little
right?
problems.
So I don't know what this is. Now, this is, as Joel said, this isn't a new technology. They double layered the OLED screen, which is unusual.
And the same manufacturer made
Yes.
this screen. That's the other thing. You
Yeah.
wouldn't think it would be split.
No, you wouldn't. So it's interesting, and I guess we'll see, what happens with this. But you're right. The opinion on it seems to be folks who haven't seen it or don't know are like, oh yeah, yes, wait, but you can't if it's yours. I get it, But here's the thing: you got to be careful with though. Is it really something that's going to be noticeable by most people or not? I don't know because I certainly have had. People are like, some people are really crazy about fingerprints on their screens. I don't care about it. I don't notice it. Some of us are crazy about the folds in the foldable screens. Some of us don't notice it. I tend to be toward the latter. I notice it for about 2 seconds and then it's gone in my notice.
Well,
so that may be why some people say, hey, it's a big deal, and other people say it's not. Might just be something like that.
Right.
But the point is, it's still doing something that was not expected. They need to fix
Well, I've
this.
got a dilemma because I'm still within the 14 days, and I can either A, return it, wait for a fix if there is one, then repurchase it, or I can hold out, and if they don't do anything, then I'm stuck with it. B, I could, change direction and buy an iPad Air, but I'm unlike Chris Gavula. I don't like, I don't like fingerprints on it. Even if I go with the Air,
I get it.
I absolutely hate the last Magic keyboard. Hate it. I thought I would be able to get this keyboard because it's got an aluminum top. It doesn't get all slick and worn out. It's got a nice trackpad that doesn't do that because it's made of glass. But now I'm waiting again, I guess.
I get you. If I were you, you could do whatever you want to do with it at the end of the day. But if you're really uneasy or unsure, then you're almost better taking it back and waiting a little bit and see what happens.
Well, worst case, I can just go buy it again because I love
exactly.
Exactly.
You could return it.
And
right?
I'll be honest, when I use
again.
it, I don't see that. I really don't see it. I got to force myself with.
Well, let me ask you this. If you don't see it, then what are you worried about? If you don't see it,
I know it's there, Chris.
So what?
Yep.
You don't see it.
Or you don't.
You see it, but you don't. It doesn't bother you.
I got you.
You see it,
Dr. Mr. McJunkin.
I get you. I'm being a little bit. I'm playing a bit of a devil's advocate here. So I
get that.
That's really all I'm doing.
That's a good question, though. It's a good question.
Supposedly the OLED screen is better, but to me, my iPhone 15 Pro looks better.
Well, let me tell you though, I have OLED on a tablet because I have iPads, but I also have a Samsung S8 Ultra. So I have a big OLED screen.
You've also got the yoga book too.
I also have the yoga book. And so, OLED has different qualities to it and things that I like and I don't like about its visuals. Anybody who has an OLED TV knows what I'm talking about, especially,
I do.
Good size one.
Screensaver, big deal.
Well, there's things you'll see at times that'll look odd to you, when you see them on other displays, they don't look that way. But you kind of get used to it. So it all comes to, and that's how I am about fingerprints. It's not that I don't notice fingerprints. It's not that I don't like to wipe off fingerprints from my screens, but as I'm using it, my mind immediately sort of eliminates that from the image.
Oh, I don't mind
same
them
thing
on
with
the
the phone.
screen. They're okay there.
Same thing with the fold in the foldables. So to me, this is kind of akin to that in terms of its annoyance factor. or it can be. But I don't have one at the moment. So, who am I to say?
Did you guys see the pictures? Did y'all see the pictures of this? The little blue wavy lines?
Well, but they're blown up to the point that could be, again, you could blow up any screen to that point and see stuff. So I'm not inclined to take that picture for what it's worth. I want to go see it myself in the store.
And that's kind of sort of where I'm going. If there's one thing that I know, if there is something that is going to be an issue or a problem, Dr. Mr. McJunkin's going to have one of those things that's going to have
I'll be the first one to buy it.
Number one. Number one, but more importantly, number two, if there is somebody that's going to be able to pick apart what exactly that problem is, and whether or not it's going to be an issue or concern or for a problem for him or potentially for other folks, again, Dr. Mr. McJunkin, but and I trust him implicitly. All right.
Yep.
The fact
but
that
I do believe Apple will fix this in the end, or they won't.
If it's a driver related issue, right there, or some other sort of
but even if it's not, let's say it's an issue, but it's not affecting all the screens, because one of the possibilities is that the two OLED screens are slightly offline.
Slightly offline, or maybe
and if that's the case, maybe it's just a manufacturing bug in the first bunch. I'll have to go back. I don't know.
Well, all right. So they go and they pull one screen out, they put a new screen in, or
whatever.
They adjust a frequency on one screen or another and eliminate it.
Exactly.
Apple's fixed a lot of problems in my life, but I've never seen them put out or recall a product ever. They've never said,
no.
Bring them all home. We're going to pay you back.
Say maybe a voluntary recall here at this point. All right. If your iPad works the way that it's supposed to, it does the things that it should be doing. However, if this is absolutely positively bothering you, they may say, then we'll be happy to go ahead and take care of you. Otherwise, you guys are going to be good with what you've got, forever. We're going to do everything we can from a software perspective or a driver perspective or whatever to make certain that unit does what it's supposed to do in the way it's supposed to. And I can guarantee you from that point forward, anything new isn't going to have that problem.
Well, Chris G, I think you can go ahead and buy yours. I honestly think this won't bother you unless your vision is really great.
Yeah, I'm not quite ready to, but I am planning to go to the store soon and take a look. So, I want to see it for myself, because I do know that even though I may think it's not a problem, it might be. I don't mean that it's not a problem. It might not be a problem for me.
I don't think it's every unit either. It's only select
right.
ones.
It might be. Again, if I were you, Larry, I'd probably take it back and wait, to see if they correct the issue with a remanufactured, not remanufactured.
Because it's a wonderful device. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
It really, really is.
Oh, sure.
It's so light. It's truly just air. I mean,
they said even the 13 inches really amazingly light. From what I'm reading.
Absolutely. And if you saw some of those YouTube videos that were out there where like buys it and just to do nothing more than destroy it on camera after he turns it on and shows us how wonderful and lovely it is.
What I do find funny is that with this problem, and it's now being talked about, all of these reviewers saw it and have had it for a couple weeks and nobody reported it. Why?
Well, that was my case. I agree with you. I didn't notice at all until I was told about it.
This is where I'm going. If they actually saw it.
Right.
Until somebody said, hey, what about and then everybody went oh yeah, look at the thing.
In some ways, to me, it's like, well, again, the tree fell in the forest. Did it really fall if nobody heard it?
Right. Yeah.
To me, it's that kind of thing. If nobody heard it and I'm running it going, looks good to me, and nobody had told me about it, then is it really an issue? I don't know.
Exactly. See, this is where I'm going.
I don't know. That's why for me, my response is always on something like this. I got to see it for myself. I'm not buying these photos. These photos could be whatever. I don't know what they are. And until I see it myself in person with the with lighting, with its lighting, it's meaningless until I see that. So that's where I'm going.
Well, we'll see what happens.
I'll let you know.
Yep. Larry, you'll need to keep us up to date. The AI stuff that's out there right now is really catching a lot of press. And apparently, the European Union has put forth or has passed and put into effect what I'm lovingly calling anti-Skynet legislation.
Yep.
So
we love that.
Yeah. It's supposed to be a little bit more comprehensive than what we've got going on here in the States, which is more of a light touch kind of voluntary compliance thing. It's a guideline. It's not even really a guardrail. It's a guideline, which between you and me isn't strong enough. We need to,
no,
I don't necessarily agree with all of the things that perhaps Europe has done here with this, but
and we've discussed those things.
We have, but they need to be. It needs to be a little bit more teethy, don't you think, Joel?
Yeah, I mean that's like it's funny that this came up because this week's assignment in my master's degree class, innovation technology, was to write an article about AI. And some of the things that really concern me about AI aren't even the things that we who are science fiction fans are afraid of, like things that have been in The Matrix or Terminator. You know, those are the things we think are the ultimate worst things ever about AI. Okay. But some things to think about here further is say you have a company like I don't know, your credit card company who decides they're going to start engaging OpenAI via ChatGPT Plus in order to use that to do things with your credit
account. Yeah, with your credit. Yeah.
Let me give you a better example. That's already happening.
I know it is.
No, not what you're saying with credit accounts, but with return policies. They're monitoring your return patterns, and AI is deciding whether or not you're a problem, and that will stop you from potentially buying something, let alone returning it.
Larry. Yeah.
What?
But it goes even deeper than that too. You know, whenever if your company you're working for is starting to look at using AI tools, one of the things they need to do is they need to not just do a security review from the security perspective, the IT security, but also a legal review. What is your recourse if the data that you give the OpenAI
plagiarize,
large language model, what if your proprietary information is used by it? That's something we need to be concerned about. Not enough companies are.
No, they're not.
Right. So apparently with this particular act, all right, which is a first of its kind in the world, all right, addresses technology challenges and opportunities for societies and economies, according to at least the people that are connected with all of this. The AI Act in Europe emphasizes the importance of trust, transparency, and accountability when dealing with new technologies, while at the same time ensuring this fast-changing technology can flourish and boost European innovation. The AI Act imposes strict transparency obligations on high-risk AI systems, while such requirements for general-purpose AI models will be a little bit lighter. And that's all nice, lovely, wonderful, and good. And I like that this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about with guardrails. They're trying to set something up that effectively says, look, this is what you can do. This is what you are not to do or can't do. All right. I think that with what's going on as far as large language models and generative AI, I think it's going to be I think these things need to be put in place sooner rather than later, so that they don't run amok on us and we don't run amok with trying to implement things like, Chris was saying, you've got AI, or Joel was saying AI sort of, making credit-based decisions, whether or not you're going to be good enough to actually get this HELOC on your paid off house or on the equity in your house or not. All right. Or whether or not you're going to be able to get that car or make that improvement or whatever it is. I would rather there be a person behind that and not a computer. I know everybody wants to say, hey, it wasn't me. I didn't make that. The computer did. Don't yell at me.
Blame the bot.
Well, all you're doing is passing the buck. All right. Grow a pair. All right. And own up to the decisions that you've made. But at the same time, I don't think these things are smart enough yet. I don't think these things are accurate enough yet. I mean, God knows they're in many cases, when we were talking about some of this in the pre-show, there are, even with Chat GPT 4.0, it's a small letter O, not a 0, but 4.0 and some other large language models that are out there. Some of the things that they are citing are still incorrect. They're still spouting and contributing to misinformation and incorrect facts. And I don't want to say out and out lies, but things that are not necessarily true. So,
well, this is very, very evidenced by that little experiment I did. Ask the very same question of two different, one of Chat GPT, one of Copilot, and came back with two totally different 300-word articles, totally different. So if you apply
I'm
that
not surprised
to what Joel was saying, people could get in trouble.
Oh, what else I think is problematic? Universities are relying on an AI-based application. I think it's called Turnitin, to actually detect whether or not
you
plagiarized or used a AI tool
bot, right,
to complete an assignment. Now, as far as grammar and punctuation, Grammarly is concerned, I don't care. All right.
That's a little different.
All day long with as much publication experience as I have. There's nobody out there that's going to tell me that that is not my voice. It absolutely is my voice. All right. And I've got the clips to prove it. And the decades of experience, you can take that turn.
And I feel the pain in my backside that proves that you are.
Yeah. Thank you for clearing that up. I appreciate it. But they're using AI to check whether or not something has been enhanced by AI. And I don't think that right now it's accurate enough to be able to do that.
I agree.
You put the wolf in charge of the wolf, they're in charge of the sheep. There you go.
Right. When like my pappy used to say.
And never mind about political bias in AI, which it definitely does have. So
depending on where it's coming from either side of the aisle. Absolutely.
But what's interesting is this is not limited to Chat GPT or Copilot. We have problems with the way Google's AI is responding and summarizing. And
absolutely. I should have queried Gemini.
But they're all right in some areas and wrong in some areas, and it's all a mess. You can't rely on any of it. Is what I'm getting.
You really can't. You really can't.
So there you go. So we do need guardrails. I think I agree with you, Chris, that it's the right direction. Usually I don't always agree with what the EU has done with some of this stuff, because I think they've taken a little bit too heavy a hand. But
they've taken a step.
This is a start.
They need to they'll need to come back and reassess.
I think here we don't take quite enough of a step. We trust corporations to do the right thing a little more.
Sorry.
Right. It's funny, as much as we've talked about, we don't always trust the government with technology decisions. I don't always trust the corporations to do the right thing either, because their motivation is not to necessarily do the right thing.
Their motivation is to make a buck and to screw everybody over. They can in order to make that buck.
So it's just a different kind of thing. But I would love to see us take at least a step toward what the EU is doing in this particular case, in this limited kind of way.
And speaking of legislation coming out of Europe,
more goofy stuff.
The UK is rushing through a DMA copycat bill, all right, to regulate what is mostly ending up to be U.S. big tech companies. Joel, help me out with this one too, man. I mean, come on.
Let's see. They're sped up a process to get Digital Markets Act clone passed before the general election. Let's see.
Well, understand there's a big point here. So
yes,
without us getting into the politics of them, again, right now it's just for people who don't know. I'm not up
on UK politics.
For people who don't know, UK politics are generally run by the Conservative Party right now.
Yep.
and
Right.
they're about to lose. They just called a general election for later this year, and they're likely going to lose control. So they want to get certain legislation through faster right now because of that, I think, is what's going on.
So
apparently there's three main things. So
go ahead. No, you're on the right track. You were going where I'm going.
Yep. They want this spells out trade on fair and reasonable terms. Present to users or potential users any options or default settings in relations to the relevant digital activity in a way that allows users or potential users to make informed and effective decisions in their own best interest about these options or settings. By the way, UK government users don't freaking know anyway.
Well, the idea here,
I was going to say, what does that even mean?
Right. Well, I think what this means, all right, is options and default settings should be set up in a way that they're easy to understand and change. Everything is grouped together in a way that it makes logical, intuitive sense for those settings to be in a way to appear.
I have a problem with that phrase. I have a horrible time with that phrase.
Well, the thing is, though, is there's people here that believe that if you copy and paste bullshit on Facebook, that they can't use your data, which is absolutely, positively, 100% incorrect. All right.
Yep.
This isn't going to help at all.
No, and let me say, gee, we should put these in intuitive ways. Intuitive means different things to different people.
Exactly.
So how are you going to do it in a way that's actually going to satisfy the law and satisfy
it is subjective.
usage?
Yes, you're right.
It is subjective. You're trying to put a law around something that's subjective, not objective. You cannot objectively observe whether or not this is an intuitive thing.
Right. But finally, they want companies to give explanations and reasonable periods of notice to users of or potential users of the relevant digital activity before making changes in relation to the relevant digital activity where those changes are likely to have a material impact on the users or potential users of changes, and yet other changes and changes and changes. Anyway,
word salad.
Yes, it is. So basically, they want if you're going to change where those settings and operations are, what this is saying is give your users or potential users enough notice that, hey, the change is coming down the line.
So let me ask you this. How does that affect our next story, which is about exactly that?
Yeah.
And that I don't know. Our next story, I do want to go ahead and mention just one thing about this before we get to our next story. It is relevant, though, and I don't want to wait too long. According to the UK Press Gazette, the bill enables the government to fine tech firms 10% of their annual turnover if they are found to abuse their market position. All right. So
their turnover within the UK or their turnover in general?
It doesn't say.
Yeah.
All right. I would think it would have to be in the UK. Right. All right. Because you cannot go ahead and fine me for sales or turnover or whatever that I'm making in other parts of the world that have absolutely nothing to do with what you're trying to legislate in the UK.
Yep.
That's completely unfair. But of course, the UK would never do that because they always have had a history of creating and implementing fair and just legislation.
Hence
the United States. But yet I'm about 2 or so months, maybe a little early on.
Anyway, or a few hundred years late. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, that too. But what you were talking about, Chris, Mac OS system settings are getting shuffled yet again, along with a couple of other UI tweaks. This coming from our friends over at Apple Insider. I thought it was very, very interesting. Now, Larry, you really took a good look at this, didn't you? You said you were saying in the pre-show.
Well, I did, but I think more importantly, let's look at it on a smaller level. I have been involved with 2 software companies in my life, and I was working on UI design. There's a lot of times that people, be they a small company or Microsoft or Apple or Google, they change something. They move a button, they do something, but in their, to their whatever they're thinking, they think they're doing the right thing, and they probably are. The problem is for those of us who are dealing with the change, it's
Right.
who moved my cheese. But for the new users 5 years down the road, it's, oh, this is in the right place. I like this.
Right.
So I don't know. I think these changes are probably typically for the better, and we shouldn't be worried about them. I'm kind of tired of hearing all the whiners every time they move one button in the UI for anything. It's just, it's why?
So
It's like
Just get
back in the
used to
day.
it.
Right. It's like back in the day when Facebook used to change things constantly.
Oh my God,
you-
you're right. They did.
Yeah.
No, and it
Yeah.
drove absolutely most. I can't tell you how many times I stood there and took it for Mark Zuckerberg. All right.
mm,
Because
from my daughter,
from
or my kids, or my wife, or my relatives, or
Right.
friends, or my neighbors, or whoever, because they say, "Why did they change this yet again? Why did they change this yet again?"
Probably for the better. They just
well,
don't believe it.
and in the case of these Apple changes, the changes they generally were making was to try to make the location of some of these things under iOS and Mac OS more similar. So,
True.
so that people who were moving back and forth between their devices didn't have to work as hard to figure out where the command for something was. And that was the broader thinking. Now, did they do a perfect job of it? Nah, and they probably,
Well,
we said they would do tweaking on this for a while, and to me, that's more of
True.
what this is. But
I would agree, but look at one of the biggest changes they're making now is they're moving the general settings right up underneath the network settings, putting it top, front, and center. Well, that's the most used setting, general settings. So why wouldn't they have it first?
Right.
mean, it
Well,
makes
And
sense
they're
to
calling
me.
out Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, network, and VPN all there at the top, and with general right underneath
Absolutely.
that. And that's really what you're going to be 9 times out of 10. If something is wrong or you need to troubleshoot something, it's probably going to be either a communications related issue or it's going to be some level of, I've got to tweak the general settings in the device.
But let's point out that that's not always true, because it's not at the top at the iOS devices. And the main reason it's not at the top of iOS devices is because the thing at the top of the iOS devices is things like putting it into airplane mode or tweaking the Wi-Fi.
Right.
Those are at the top. So
And those probably won't change either.
Nope. So you could argue where it should be or shouldn't be. And I would say that they probably should be a little different because the use cases of those devices are different. But
Sure.
I don't agree. I don't disagree with the notion of, in general, making them more similar. They don't have to be identical. They don't have to be in identical order, but making them more similar, grouping similar kinds of things together.
Yep.
That all makes sense to me. It makes it
I
easier to
kind of
move from
doubt
device
that
to
they
device.
will. I don't think they'll ever make them perfectly identical. They'll have the
No.
same ones, but like you said, they'll keep the airplane mode at the top on iPhone.
Sure.
So I get it, but
It's a
but this
lot of
goes back
noise,
to,
I think.
but this goes back to the UK law about having to notify. Okay, so what are you supposed to wait for approval from somebody? Who's
It
to
doesn't
say that this is okay?
From what I saw in that particular article, there doesn't say anything in there about approvals of changes.
No. So,
All right.
so I mean,
And,
other than
and I would basically tell any governmental agency that is trying to tell me how to change or
So-
how to regulate my commercial-based software that does not have any governmental interaction, all right, other than the government may decide to use it.
well, so then
they don't
the
have
question-
the ability to make. I don't need their approval.
but there'll be a lot of questions about things like, okay, so now what do you mean by notification? Do you have to have official press release on it? Is it just getting these leading kind of sites to report on it? I mean, what constitutes?
Well,
we've done enough for
press release. A
notification.
lot of the bigger news places are going to pick that up.
Well,
and
but
they're
the
gonna
question
report
is,
on
what will be enough? What will be considered enough? Because we've seen before where press releases don't get picked up, and then you don't
Right.
know something happened. And it's like, oh, well, you didn't tell us. Well, we released a press release. Okay, nobody saw it, but yeah, okay,
it. Agreed.
it happens.
Yeah.
So what's going to be? How are they going to regulate this? I don't know yet.
Well,
It's
I
going
don't
to be
know.
interesting.
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that.
Yeah,
But
we'll have to see.
Mac OS 15,
But yeah.
we'll hear about it in a few days.
About 3 weeks, yeah, 2-3 weeks. Yeah,
Right.
here
We
we go.
will.
Coming up quick at the beginning of WWDC. So, and
Buckle up, kids.
yeah, buckle up, Buttercup. It's gonna get into. It's gonna be a bumpy ride.
Mhm.
Here we go.
There we go.
All right. I
All
want to go
right.
ahead and on that lovely, lovely note, I want to go ahead and move us to our mobile Linux segment. And I would like us all to stop. Please remove your hats. And
have
let
something
us
else. We
all
have something
extend a
else.
moment of silence. I thought this was very, very apropos, considering that we had Brother Perillo on with us last week, and we were talking about ICQ. There is a word this week that the ICQ network and application will be shutting down after nearly 30 years of operation. So, you know, here it comes, kids.
Weird timing. Weird
30
timing.
days from
About
today.
what, 4
Yeah.
owners overall, I think.
Yeah.
30 days from today. So June 26th will be its last day of life.
I don't know.
So-
For me, I haven't used it. I have to admit, I haven't used it in a long time.
Yeah, it doesn't
Neither
mean
have a lot of
anything
us.
anymore. It was a
But
big deal, but it's
it
not
was
anymore.
no, but you do get a kind of sad sense of kind of
It was the
wistful
best
nostalgia.
messenger I ever used. I'll say that.
You know,
Well,
it
from an
certainly did a
aggregator
great job.
perspective, yes, it was, because it did until AOL started getting really, really pissy about, we don't want you on our network. We don't want you on our network. It was the place to go and the app to use, because you had friends on all of the platforms,
did.
right? Whether it's
Oh, yeah.
AOL, MSN,
Mhm.
IRC or whatever. It integrated all of those instant messages into one specific client for one specific individual, and everything was all in one place, and it was absolutely freaking
And
awesome.
let's note that that's exactly where we are with messaging again, where they're starting to become aggregators again.
Yep.
We're in exactly that place right now. We're on the precipice of a lot of that happening.
Again.
And the biggest reason we can't get further down that road is the infighting between the current owners of the ones that are trying to aggregate.
Yep,
Well, they
true.
all want to be the one that's in charge, right? They want
Absolutely.
to be the big dog, every one of them.
Yep.
Right. So, you know, I remember we talked to, we got a little waxing nostalgic last week when we talked about this, but I remember my my use of ICQ and my ICQ number, and I still think I know the password. I'm not going to mess with it because honestly, I don't need to go and dink with that.
I was trying earlier to log in. I couldn't get logged in. So it was just.
But I remember that it was originally founded by a company called Mirabilis, I believe, out of Israel.
Yep.
And then it was sold off to, of all places and all people, AOL bought them.
Yes, I remember that.
And I thought that was really, really interesting. AOL, who was their fiercest detractor, stay out of our network. We don't want you on our network. Oh, we're going to buy you to keep you out.
And Chris, I don't know if you remember, but we WUGNET were one of the biggest business partners of AOL, and we were involved in part of that. So I do remember.
I do remember myself. I know that I believe it is currently owned by a company out of Russia.
Yep.
At this point, and from what I understand, they are saying that they are shutting it down on June 26th. And if you want to use or continue to communicate with those folks, you can use the application that I guess the current owner is shoving everybody to. I'm looking for that.
I didn't read
the name of that app. I know it begins with a V, but long story short, VK Messenger. That's it. You can chat with your friends on ICQ will stop working from June 26th. You can chat with friends in VK Messenger and colleagues in VK Workspace. And that's, you know, what the current current owner of the property is saying.
Yeah, not a surprise.
It's sad, but it is true. All right.
Yep.
And that's just the way that it is. You know, I'm surprised that it has been around.
Well, this is
as long as it
technology.
has
That's
been.
what happens, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So, but some good news. Apparently, we reported, what was it, last week or the week before, that Microsoft was shutting down all of Bethesda Studios. And that's currently not the case, is it, Joel?
Correct. They're only closing 4 of the gaming studios, including Arcane Austin, Alpha Dog Studios, Tango Gameworks, and Roundhouse Games. They're all going to be closing, according to an email by Matt Booty, presidents of game content and studios of Microsoft. Their changes are grounded in prioritizing high impact titles and further investing in Bethesda's portfolio of blockbuster games. So basically, they're going to concentrate on the well-known games that they have brought out,
Make some money.
like Fallout,
Like
Fallout
Fallout and the Fallout
76.
TV show. So
Yes, which, by the way, I finished this week, and even if you've never heard of the game, watch it. It's good series. So, but
Yeah.
that's good news, because some of these are some of the best games, some of the games that really have impacted the gaming world. So like Fallout, and some of the other ones, I forget there's so many that Bethesda had over the years.
Hi-Fi Rush.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some others.
But at least it's not the whole entire kit and caboodle, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
So
it looks
Fallout's
like
still
we
gonna be
all
around.
like we all got that one. We all got off on that one. So glad
Yeah.
to see that we're wrong, and that everybody else was wrong. Glad to see that, because it would have been disappointing to see the games go.
So agree, 100% agree.
Yep.
I believe what was it, that there was just recently a release from Arcane Austin for Redfall,
Mm-hmm.
and like that, and that's good, probably going to be the end of it. All
Mhm.
right. Yeah, actually according to the article that we are citing from fox7austin.com, the last update is the last update. The game and its servers will remain online, at least for now. All right.
Right.
And but at some point, kids, it's going to stop. It's going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I would expect that sooner rather than later. So if you bought the game and any tokens or add-ons or special goo jams and whatever for the game, go play it up now, because the days are numbered.
Yep.
So, and that
And
would be
that-
for any and all of these titles, right?
Yep. And now some of them aren't, like, for example, the Elder Scrolls Online, Roundhouse Games is going to be joining ZeniMax on that. So, I mean, there's lots of series server, like, well, a lot of these use servers and stuff like that. So like Redfall's probably the one I would expect to see shutting down. Elder Scrolls, not so much, because it's just such a huge universe. So, but so they, in a Hi-Fi Rush, is also another one that might be on the chopping block. So, if you like those games, keep on, play them and enjoy them while you can.
Yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily go and start, or think about how much money, if any, you're going to continue to invest in that, because those things that are
Mhm.
scheduled to close are going to close. It's going to be coming, and you will don't want to waste your money. At the same time, play them while you got them. So
Yep.
there you go. And speaking of Google and AI, as we have been, apparently Google already knows how to make AI searches helpful.
But they
not
aren't
with the
doing it.
AI overviews.
But not with their overviews.
Yeah.
Not with their search overviews. They're not doing a very good job. That's
Yeah.
is what we're seeing.
Well, what's going on with this?
The overview. So they do. They've added AI to their search process.
Right.
And one of the things it can do is you can get an overview of your search, and apparently it's doing a pretty bad job on the whole.
Yep.
A lot of mistakes, a lot of errors, very similar to conversations we had about Copilot and its issues.
Nice.
And it's like, this seems to be true across the board, again, with all these large language models being applied to search. And then some people are saying, well, why exactly did we need to apply that to search in the first place?
Or anything else. I mean, that's some
right.
Some of these companies need to think about. One thing I noticed with Gmail is that now Gemini can help me write the email. Why do I need that? You know, I guess it might be if I'm trying to write a particularly difficult email, maybe, but you know, the thing is AI can be a very powerful tool that can help you automate and get rid of a lot of mundane things. But sometimes we need to do that mundane thing, and we don't want to trust that mundane thing to
AI. They've already put this into Google Workspace, but it is you can turn it off. You can turn it off.
But I think the larger concern I have, and I've read a lot of doomsday articles on the topic. I'm sure we all have. But the idea is we're going to raise a generation of kids that are complete idiots because nobody's going to know how to.
We already did that.
Well, we learned that was that was the fear. I remember we're all old enough. I remember when calculators came out, it was a big deal because people would not know how to do basic math. And I would argue that our current generation kids can't do basic math anymore. Not a one of them can. And so that turned out to kind of be true. It took a little longer than they thought, but sure enough, we got a generation of kids that can't do math. And not in their heads or not in, on paper the way we used to. But now you're going to do AI. So it's going to write their emails for them. Okay. I'm going to go, okay, what do I need you for now? At some point.
Well, if you're a business owner or an employer, yeah, exactly.
How long does that happen? Because if it can generate a cranked out message that seems like it was written by a person, does that become good enough? Now, under business models, wouldn't we call that satisficing behavior? I mean, wouldn't that be just enough? It's good enough. So that's what's going to happen if we keep this up. And I think it's the wrong way to go, but here we are.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just one example of that, these summaries being wrong and you don't know, they sound good.
Yeah, because they're trying to tell folks that they're not really writing the email, they're just taking the person's thoughts and making it better. Like, hey, chatbot or whatever, write an email to Chris G and tell him I've taken care of everything we talked about on the Polinsky project. Well, okay, but wouldn't you rather hear that from me as a boss?
You would think so.
Well,
I
how
would
does
too.
Chris know that you didn't do it?
Right.
All right. Now,
because somebody ran it through my homework checker, the AI checker.
So then every manager in the world is going to have a copy and turn it in. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Jesus. Come on, please, please.
Right.
I still don't like where it's going. I'm sorry.
No, I don't either. And because
honestly,
if that's where it's going to go, you're making everybody dumber, and now you're going to make them pay for it because you won't accept their need and dependency on all of the tools that you say that they can't.
Well, not only we're making them dumber, but we're making them.
We're not making them just dumber. We're making them incapable of having a conversation.
Independent thought.
Or having any critical. Yeah, you can't do any critical thought whatsoever. We're not teaching them how to do that anymore. And make matters worse, we can feed them bad information and they won't know or care that they've gotten bad information. That's a problem. But that's where we've headed. We've actually headed a long way down that path already. Anybody who's on one of the big social media networks knows that because the AIs in those tend to generate, they don't generate, that they upvote things that are not necessarily true, but they're very, very. We've gone to a society where everything's very sensationalistic now. That's what wins. That's what bubbles up to the surface. That's what bubbles up to our searches, and that's a problem. We have to figure out a way to put. Once again, we get back to bumpers. Can't we put bumpers
all
on
that
this
wrong
thing?
information is what the large language models are finding and using,
and that's what they're. That's exactly what they're regurgitating. Is the bad.
My goodness, could this possibly
garbage in, garbage out? Possibly.
Could it possibly?
But we've got a generation of kids who can't tell the difference.
See, and that's the thing. Could it possibly require us to stop it with the fake news? Could it possibly require us to get back to a truth and journalism sort of thing and get away from all the freaking clickbait and cutesy whatever it is kind of things?
But
and actually get back to. I mean, is this going to allow Dan Rather and Walter Cronkite to rest in peace? If is it going to allow us to get back to a point where we're actually going to need real journalists?
Well, if it bleeds, it leads. It won. That has basically won at this point.
True.
That's where we are.
And that's but it would be nice if it would turn that circle sooner rather than later. But that's just me.
Yeah, well, it's not just it's sound bites, it's quick things. Kids don't want to watch things that are any longer. They don't want to hear the explanations anymore. They don't care.
It's all for them. It's all TLDR, right?
Yep.
Too long, didn't read. All right.
Yep. And that's what happens, and that's where we are. And unfortunately,
well, do they know that that's TDB?
Yeah, they don't care because we're all going to be dead and gone. They don't care.
Nope.
Hey, you know, I cringe and I shudder and I ache for my children and grandchildren. All right.
All you can
I'm really afraid for them.
All you can do is try to teach them right. That's all you can do. Try to teach them to critically think for themselves. Try to teach them to do it. I know plenty of people that I know that are trying to do that with their kids, and but it's not enough. But I think I'm hoping.
No, it's not. But
this is what we're at. We are.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's easy to digress on these topics. Unfortunately, it really is. But that's what AI is doing to us kids. It's driving us nuts.
Does this mean that we actually have to, keep shooing them off the lawn, or do we have to invite them in?
We have to keep shooing. No, we have to keep shooing them off the lawn.
Thank you. All right.
We do.
All right. Well, that's fine with me.
And you can't not feed them candy either.
No.
After don't give them water after midnight.
Yeah. There you go, kids.
Jeez,
very important rules. All right.
Words to live by.
So that is the end of our mobile Linux segment, and we're going to get into our Windows segment in just a moment, right after this brief message. Hi, this is Christopher Spera with iTechGear.org, and I'm here to tell you that iTechGear.org and the iTechGear Weekly are on Patreon. Patreon is a platform for creators, allowing them to express their creative side in an organized, marketable fashion and earn a living or create a really cool kind of side hustle. You can create a community around your hobby of choice. You can gain followers. You can get members and supporters all along the way. You can create subscription products that for a pledged amount every month, you'll provide to your members and followers. Setup is easy. Prices are reasonable, and you can have your pledges auto-deposited into an account of your choice every month. With iTechGear.org, our initial offering is a monthly newsletter for just $3 a month. This is our initial offering, and we'll have other tiers and other products and other offers up in the coming months. Become a patron of our site. Grow with us, and we'll provide you with the tech understanding that you're missing right now. Join us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/iTechGear. That's www.patreon.com/iTechGear. And welcome back to the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 91. Chris is a Toys R Us kid. Thank you.
He can sing too.
I will. So let's go ahead.
He's a multi-talented dynamo.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go.
You'll get yours. Anyway.
Always do.
Always do. All right. So I want to go ahead and get us into our Windows segment. And this first story is kind of interesting. And speaking of deception and speaking of deceptive practices.
And were we?
We were kind of, sort of, maybe, I don't know. Microsoft is claiming claims that comparing the Surface Pro 11 and the M3 MacBook Air.
Yeah.
Those claims are deceiving. All right. What's going on? And of course, we did cite here one of our favorite partners, the Boy Genius report, indicating that these are, that those comparisons are, what's going on, Chris?
They're misleading. I don't know if they're deliberately deceptive, but they certainly are misleading. So, you guys know I'm a big fan of the whole idea of moving Windows platform to ARM, getting it off of these Intel chips. I think Intel chips are very inefficient and have a lot of baggage with them. But I like that the ARM is driving us away from that. But So the latest, greatest of ARM has been these Qualcomm chips that have come out, the Snapdragon Elites and whatnot that have come out, and they're going to be great. I mean, for Windows users, they're going to be wonderful. Yeah, they'll be the next thing, the next greatest thing since sliced bread. However, the first ones that came, the first Surface Pro 11s that came out, and the Surface laptop that came out, they took them and compared them to the MacBook Air, and said, "Look, we're way faster."
Right.
Didn't look at any other of the MacBook lineup at all. Didn't compare the fact that the one device has a fan and the MacBook Air does not, which actually changes the thermals, which changes how things behave,
how things perform, right? Because when it's cooler, it performs better.
Correct. So when you drive it up to scale, a hot computer is going to slow down in order.
Of course, it is.
So they've basically taken, and what they've done is they've compared apples to oranges, but tried to tell you they were comparing apples to apples, and they really weren't.
Exactly.
That's what they've done. So, and they've deliberately cherry-picked the results, which is, again, not unusual. We've seen this happen for years with Intel. We've seen it happen for years with ARM, not ARM, AMD, and all these, and Apple even as well. They've all cherry-picked their results when they present them. They've all done it. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
And they chose the things that make them look the best. What we haven't seen here yet is the Surface Pro, especially, is really going to compete with not only the MacBook Air, but would also compete with the MacBook Pro. And they're not really comparing it to that at this point, because we don't really know what the new MacBook Pro will look like when it has an M4 chip yet. Hard to compare.
No, we do, but do we have some of those? We don't have those.
No, they don't exist yet. No M4 based computers exist, so you can't really compare them at this point. So they were comparing them to the M3, but you're looking to compare to what will be an M3 Pro, an M3 Max, M3 whatever, and of course there's none of that yet to really compare to.
The lowest performing M3 is what they.
And that's what they've compared it to. So they've said, and let's make it clear, there are different variants on this Qualcomm chip.
Right.
So they took their top version and compared it to the lowest version of the Apple device. So, I want to see this succeed, because I think Windows needs to make this leap. This is a big deal. I really think this is an important deal. But wow, come on.
If you're going to do some kind of a comparison, you can't take the best of yours and the worst of theirs and mash them together and say, see, we're better.
Well, in essence, what they did, they built a football field, and on their side, their goalposts were 30 feet apart. And for the opponent, they made the goalposts 12 feet apart. So it's harder to kick a field goal.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much what they've done. And so at the end of the day, what it looks like, at least superficially, is that the Macs are still going to be, the Apple chips are still faster on the whole.
Right. You're also looking at a third generation versus a first generation.
Well, you could argue it's more than a third. You could argue that some of the last of the A series were really the same thing too. So you may be fourth or fifth down, or you're generations down the road in Apple's world. You just are. You've been doing this for a long time. You've been making your own chips for a long time. You're kind of on your own. But this is new for Windows world, so to speak. Not new, but newish, because they were taking the phone chips and using them for computers prior to this, and it worked. It worked better than people expected it to. Chris, you and I both have machines based on those chips, and they're actually pretty dang good.
Yeah, they are
what they are. But this is a leap ahead. They needed to make this leap ahead, and they should be applauded for the leap that they're making, rather than this deceptive kind of thing. They didn't need to do that. This is really a good leap on its own, without need to obfuscate it, in the midst of everything else that's going on. It just wasn't necessary. It's a little disappointing.
It is. I'd like to. I like you. I would like to see this succeed. Like you, I would like to see them compare like-minded or like-type animals in the same jungle. All right. I don't like that they've done.
And by the way, kids, benchmarks don't have to match. It isn't. That isn't what makes a computer work for you or not. That the fact that they made a big leap, that really is enough. It really is. So. They
Agreed.
didn't see that though. They didn't see that. That's not how they present. Again, I think the way they presented it was was more than a little misleading. So
I think so, but unfortunately, that tends to be the way of the benchmark
it does.
publication, and everybody's it's a marketing tool. See, ours
It
is better.
is.
All right.
Yep. See, ours is better, and they don't need to do that. You don't have to
No.
go negative on all this
Agreed.
stuff, kids. Just sell the
Mhm.
positive aspects of what you've done and move on. That's all you
Absolutely.
got to do.
And we're going to move on.
Are
So
we? Good.
we are, because apparently Microsoft is also introducing AI-based PCs.
Yeah. Well,
Chris?
as we're talking about.
Yeah. What is an AI-based PC?
Well, this is their Copilot Plus PCs. That's the
Mhm.
the official
Right.
marketing term for this, right? The Copilot Plus PCs. And obviously the most obvious thing is if they're going to have a Copilot key on them, but that's not really what's happening here. So there's a bunch of things coming around. They're going to base the PC around the fact that the ARM chips have neural processors, which means they're capable of supporting a lot of these kind of background AI functions, if you
Mhm.
will. And they're going to leverage that to do things like recall is probably the big feature that's going to keep this sort of memory of what you're doing and what you're doing on the PC. That, by the way, scares me more than it comforts me.
I was going to say that.
Agreed.
But apparently, so you'll be able to locate your content across your different events and things that you've done. Great, that's wonderful. They're going to have a kind of co-creator that's going to help you with using the neural engines to create images and create other things within it. I actually saw some things on that. It actually was kind of clever. It actually kind of takes what we're already doing on some of the phones with photos and actually kind of takes it another step, which is interesting. Good, again, good or bad. They're going to do live captions again. That's something that we've seen come from the phones, from the phone world as well. Some restyling and some other settings that they're going to be able to do now. And this will just they'll keep adding features to this, and they'll use that processor for these features. But basically, it's all going to be based around AI stuff. It's all going to be based around Copilot. It's all going to be, well.
Right. Copilot is Microsoft's AI persona. They've gotten rid of Cortana, and now they're saying Copilot, and
which is Chat GPT based.
It is, because of course Microsoft invested a boatload of cash into OpenAI, and I think at least going forward, it's going to, some of the things that you're going to see in Copilot are going to mirror very, very closely what features are released with Chat GPT, although there may be some differences between the two.
So let me make it clear for those who don't understand, these Copilot PCs from Microsoft. There's going to be other non-Microsoft ones that supposedly will be out there that'll have this branding around them. But the big ones from Microsoft right now are the Surface Pro 11,
right,
which is coming out, and the Surface Laptop. Help me with the number.
7.
6.
No, I don't. I think it's 6.
6.
So
just said 7.
I think so.
So that's that's what they mean when they say that right now. There's other devices that will follow.
I kind of worry about one thing.
What's that?
Just
Microsoft's
one?
right.
Larry?
No, go ahead. I was
no.
I said all I said was just one, Larry.
I just said I sort of worry about Microsoft because they're in this zone of trying to create a better mousetrap every time we turn around lately. And I'm worried that what's going to happen, the mousetrap is going to reach back and snap on their own finger.
Mm-hmm.
It may. I wouldn't be surprised if it did. I think it is, to be very, very honest, I think it's a little early to be marketing AI the way that we are pushing things from a AI perspective. In other words, it's not really AI. It's still large language model. AI stands for artificial intelligence, and until this thing can rudimentarily think on its own, or start pulling things together and making correlations to things that might help me to think, hey, why didn't I think of that? I can see that. It's not really AI. It's not really artificial intelligence.
But when it does that, it'll be scary, right?
Right. So I'm a little hesitant to call these things AI PCs.
Mhm.
From a hardware perspective, an AI PC is anything that is a computer with any microprocessor that has a neural engine in it. All right. And again, this neural engine, this is this super thinking, computer thinking sort of brain, if you will, that allows the computer to do these kinds of, or eventually will enable it to do these kinds of correlations and comparisons and make these suppositions on its own, as opposed to just sort of spitting back, here's what I know about this, or here's what I found about this. All right. And I think that it's going to be another decade or two at least before we see anything like that start happening. At least I would hope so. All right. And by that time, I would hope that they would really start putting some serious guardrails around what AI can do and cannot do.
I would hope we would put the social concerns in front of that before we let ourselves
media
get there.
Constraints in place first.
Well,
Yes.
and everything else,
And can we please have it stop creating fake news? Can we please stop having it, cite things that in query answers that are completely not true and are made up? Can we?
I think the answer is no, Chris. I'm sorry, but
no. Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You don't need. Well, and that's what I see a lot of people say. Well, AI can generate misinformation. You don't need AI to do that.
No, you've got.
But the problem is, Joel, it can do it at a much higher rate and with a much higher success rate than a person can.
Spread it easier.
Yeah, it can spread it more easily because it is doing it en masse.
Yeah. Well, you know what could actually cause problems for AI in the future?
What is that?
Internet service outages.
Well,
now, I'm going to tell you
I've said that enough.
Now, the amount of information and storage for that information that is required is going to be a heck of a lot more than the 256 gigabytes of storage you've got on that Surface Pro 11 or that MacBook, that M4 MacBook Air or MacBook Pro, right? That's coming later on this year. You're talking near petabytes of information. All right. And even your 4 terabyte or 8 terabyte drive is only just a drop in the bucket of space that you're going to need. So if that service ever goes down, that AI PC isn't going to be able to do much of anything from an AI perspective.
And that's what we saw. And that's what we saw earlier this week.
Yeah.
With the Microsoft outage, it screwed up. It was Bing. It was essentially Bing that was screwed up, which is their search engine. Right. But unfortunately, Copilot was dependent on it, and DuckDuckGo and some other things were all dependent on it. And these PCs that are coming are going to be much more dependent on it. So if you want to be in this space, you're going to have to live with these dependencies right now. And that may be a challenge, and I don't care, I don't care as we move into AI world, these Copilot PCs are like the first very blatant example of this kind of stuff. Right. But we're seeing this come along in all of our things. We're seeing this happen in our Apple and our Android devices. We're seeing this happen in our in Chromebooks. We're seeing all these kind of things coming down the pike that are going to be more and more AI dependent and these cloud service dependent. Right. And the history of cloud services is not a good one up to this point.
Unfortunately, it's not.
The outage this week was Bing. AWS has a long history of failures and problems. Google Cloud has had a history of failure problems. Look at Australia, not very, very recently, where they wiped all those stupid accounts accidentally. Right. These things, the point is, these dependencies can bring you to a screaming halt, and we've seen it happen quite a lot.
Well, and you don't have to use cloud host. I was gonna say you don't have to use cloud hosting for it to implement AI features. You can build the AI based on OpenAI in-house. You can just download the code and do it.
Yep, you can. And one of the things that I think we found out this past week, after services were fully restored, is that everything that the AI does is transactional in terms of making certain that the everything has to sync back together. Everything. I mean, there were portions or pieces, parts, areas geographically that were not as up to speed as other areas, and there were still some quote unquote false or incorrect or more incorrect things that were being returned as answers because not all of the transactions had synchronized to all endpoints. So I think what we're seeing and what we're finding is that this is a lot more. This isn't just where, okay, it's just, I get the most recent update and everything can backfill when it gets to me and everything's going to be fine. That's not the case. It's transactional, meaning I've got to get item number 1 before I can get item number 2, before I can get item number 3, et cetera. And it's got to go in that order, and I have to receive them and process them in that order in order for my large language model that I'm relying on to be caught up and fully synchronized.
And let's make it more complicated. In this world today, I know the company I work for does this, and I know a lot of people's companies do this. We outsource a lot of our stuff to India, to the Philippines, to wherever. We outsource
to China, to Mexico,
and so
whatever.
Now all of a sudden, I'm waiting for transactions from something that happened in another part of the world, and it's stopping me and breaking me, killing me. You know, there's actually a recent article that talks about IT managers and decision makers, and they were just looking in the example of Amazon's AWS. They said more than 60% of the IT managers use some services that are dependent on AWS to work, and more than half of them had a failure within the last 12 months.
Oh.
So
don't you love it when a plan comes together?
So the point is we're all very, very dependent on this. Unless we can figure out a way to make this back end a lot more robust than it currently is, and it's not. I'm sorry, we pretend that it is, but it really isn't.
No, it's not. And honestly, geographic distance from endpoint to endpoint makes a difference. All right.
And it shouldn't. And in a proper cloud world, it shouldn't, but it does.
It shouldn't, but it does, because you have no idea what that data signal is going to have to do to get from point A to point Z.
And as you just pointed out, redundancy isn't redundancy. It has to sync up. It has to time itself
up. And based on some of that latency, based on some of those lags or delays, I may get update number 3 before I get update number 2. All right.
True enough.
And when that happens, I not only do I have to go ahead and I got 1, then 3, then 2. Now I got to stop and move
wait.
2 to the correct position and then recompile and redo all of the decisions based on this new order of stuff. And if it's in a much longer list than just 3 items, it's going to take a while to recompile all of that stuff.
It does.
And have all the dependencies sort of work itself, which is what we saw.
So what we're seeing, so the concern, like I said, is as we get PCs that are more dependent on this, unless they do a lot more where they put these features locally, but again, the data they're looking for is going to be out there in the cloud. These things are going to be more challenged and more challenging. I mean, you can't make a search engine happen locally on your PC. You just can't. Sorry.
Nope.
The data isn't there, so your dependencies are going to be higher.
The net has to be ubiquitous. It must be always on. It must be always available.
And it's not yet.
And because let's face it, the cloud, like we said last week, the cloud is just somebody else's computer in somebody else's garage. All right.
Just a bigger garage.
And by the way, Bob says
garage with a fabulous cooling system and power redundancy and a UPS and all that other stuff, but it's basically just somebody else's computer sitting in somebody else's closet, garage, bedroom, whatever. It's just the way it is.
It's the way it is.
Node on the internet, and if access to that internet is blocked, paused, delayed, or something else, you're out of luck. So
that's how it goes.
It is, and this is another reason why I'm like, look, we're not ready for AI yet. Why are we all of a sudden pushing AI when it's clear that the underpinnings, the infrastructure needed to support it is not ready? It's not.
It is not. Does this sound familiar, kids?
We've said this before. I've said this before. What do you do when the cloud evaporates? How many times have I said that phrase? And how many times have I written that article for different publishers? What do you do when the cloud evaporates? i.e. the internet is not there.
The internet is not there. And
All right,
and
what
what
do
do
you
we do? We watch transactions stop. That's what happens. We've seen it happen.
You watch them stop and back up, and things clog, and then all of a sudden somebody says, "Hey, I can't get to the thing.
I can't
Right,
get to
now,
the thing
great,
from the thing.
you got back to the thing, but all of this information is wrong. It doesn't seem right. Why? Because it's processing out of order. It's all transactional based, meaning you have to have 1 to get to 2, 2 to get to 3, 3 to get to 4, etc. Ad infinitum to infinity. And if one of those things is out of order, all of your information from that point on is bullshit. It is worthless.
It is.
So,
Well.
And on that happy note, I'm going to move us to our tip of the week section.
Oh my
our
goodness.
segment. And I want to go ahead and I want to remind everybody, hey, our tip of the week is something that we here at iTechGear.org really take seriously, because iTechGear was founded with the intent of making technology easy for everyone to understand. That's the reason why it's here. All right. This team specifically has dedicated much of their writing careers to this specific purpose. And every week, iTechGear is going to feature a new computing tip authored by one of our fabulous and most experienced editors and authors. We're going to provide it here as well as on iTechGear.org. If you've got questions, requests, suggestions, you can send those over to tips at iTechGear.org, and we will take a look at them, and we would love to hear from you. This week, I'll tell you what, we had some a really cool iPad pro tip last week, and continuing with that because the iPads are new right now. Let's talk about focus settings for a minute. All right, focus settings. Apple kind of rolled them out a few years ago, and it might be some of the most. It could be some of the most used settings of all times. All right. Focus is really talking about their fancy sort of, do not disturb profiles that can be enabled manually or automatically at certain times of the day, or even when you travel somewhere. All right. They can be geofenced. They allow you to control which notifications you see, who can contact you, and a bunch of other things. It can be helpful when you want certain notifications while you're trying to focus at work or focus on something specific, are blocked. All right. So that you have that time to focus or relax or whatever it is that you're doing. To do this, you can go to settings and focus on your iPad, and you'll find a number of different options that will help you set up focus mode for work, for personal, for fitness, for mindfulness, and a bunch of other things. The interface will guide you through setting up your notification settings, which contacts can ping you and which cannot, and a whole bunch of other things. Plus, once you've set it up, it'll sync automatically with every other Apple device that you have, including your iPhone, your Apple Watch, your Mac, your phone. So no matter where in the Apple ecosystem you set these things up, they're going to be available on every other iDevice that you own. And these can really help you focus on whatever device you're working with at the moment. So there you go, kid. Configure your focus settings, gain the benefits of being left alone. I want to be alone. Gain the benefit of being not disturbed, so that you can focus on the needy tasks at hand. Kind of cool, huh?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that Microsoft tries to do some things similar. It's not quite as sophisticated, and it's not quite as well put together, which is one of the reasons why I really like these focus settings on in the Apple side of the world. So
I use them a lot.
Yeah. So I also want to go ahead and move us now to our pick of the week segment. But before we get there, I want to again take a moment and let our listeners know that our show picks are typically hardware, software, and other items of interest that we have individually purchased and actually use, and that we like enough that we want to recommend them to you, our growing listener base. These aren't paid advertisements. These aren't items that we have any kind of affiliated marketing relationship with. If they were, the editorial policy at iTechGear.org indicates and states emphatically that we must let you know that up front before we give you the pick. These are just things that we sincerely believe in, and we want to bring them to you at the end of each show. Why?
Because we like you.
MOUSE, you betcha. That's the good stuff. And Larry, this week, you've got the pick. And what are we looking at here?
We are looking at a pencil.
A pencil?
That's it, a pencil.
A pencil.
Now, actually, when I bought my new iPad Pro, the one with the OLED display problem, I also bought the new Apple Pencil Pro. Ooh. I have only once before used the Apple Pencil, and that was the first iteration of it. But I've had a couple of weeks to play around with it now. So first of all, if you are already a digital artist or creator, you already know you need this new pencil. So my comments are more for the rest of us, the common everyday pencil pushers, if you will. in full disclosure, I am the farthest thing you can imagine from an artist. I can't even draw a recognizable stick man. So my thoughts are more, again, from a basic user who doesn't really need an Apple Pencil, let alone the Pencil Pro, or at least I never thought I needed it. Turns out this amazing tool is great for taking meeting notes.
It is.
I mean, it is. I've used it now for 2 meetings. I've had it for 10 days. I've used it for 2 meetings, in-person meetings. And typing during an in-person meeting is just really distracting. It's that guy over in the corner that's going clickety clackety click, whatever. And it's just, even if it's on a computer, it makes noise. It's distracting. But scribbling with a digital pen is never noticed any more than scribbling on paper. So, you know what I found is also great for, actually not the pencil, but if you brought your iPad and you're using your pencil, it's a great thing to just take a quick picture of something you saw on the whiteboard or that big monitor in the meeting room. It's quicker than you just pick it up off the table and use it than using your phone. But back to the pencil. I've never used it before. I'm not a pencil person. But the coolest thing about the Pencil Pro, for me anyway, is the squeeze gesture, the new squeeze gesture. Having that menu light up under the pen, I think it's brilliant. It's a great idea. It works for me. It's an easy menu to navigate left or right on that little curve. And I'm sure for you artists out there, this will open up a whole new world of creativity, this pen. But if there's one thing missing about this pen on this pencil, it's the same thing that's been missing since day one with the Apple Pencil.
What's
the
that?
Ability to simply turn the damn thing over and use the blunt end as an eraser. Thank you, Microsoft, for doing it right with your slim pen.
We all agree with that, and I think we've also kind of said that before. But I'm wondering, is there some kind of like patent or copyright reason why they can't do that?
No, I don't know. I wouldn't think. A pencil is a number
because
2
we've been
yellow
doing that with
or
regular pencils and erasable ink for decades before before anything was electronic.
Yeah, that would mean you would only have one brand of
I'm just trying
pencils.
to think about why they wouldn't have already done this, because I agree with you. I wish they
Apple.
would. Yeah,
no, because it's an extra set of sensors and an extra set of things, if you will. There's additional engineering that's required in order to go ahead and do that. Now, you would think,
but there's been years and 3 generations now, right? Of these.
This is what I'm saying. You would think that after, people have been probably begging for this for a while. So why isn't it there? And at this point, I don't know.
I don't either. That's why it
doesn't make any sense.
I was just speculating as to one possible reason, maybe.
Yeah.
Bottom line,
tell you though that it's not, there's no copyright or other sort of.
No, I don't think so. But even if you think you're not a pencil person, I recommend you try this one because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I've got the 2nd generation and I love it. So
$129. Not on sale yet, anywhere.
Good stuff, guys.
Yep. But I will tell you that this particular URL that you've cited here is really kind of cool because it shows you exactly all of the Apple Pencils that are still available, and all 4 of them can still be bought.
Who they work
depending
with
on
or what they work with.
Depending on what sort of iPad you have. And there are buy links on for all 4 on that page. I think what really is cool, though, is underneath the buy links, you find a section called Apple Pencil Features, and it shows you exactly what each one of them will and will not do. And I think one of the cool things that you see here in differences between the Apple Pencil 2 and the Apple Pencil Pro, like you said, Larry, it'll do that. It's got that squeeze thing that's going on to open a palette of tools, line weights, colors that you can easily switch on the fly. But it'll also do what they call a barrel roll, which is rotate the barrel to change orientation of the shape pen and brush tools. It'll do haptic feedback, so the pencil's going to vibrate when you squeeze and tap. And it is also, and this is really huge, supported by Find My. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's a biggie.
Finally.
That is a big thing, because that could save you, because $129 ain't cheap.
Not cheap.
All right.
And it will fall off your device sooner or later, I promise.
It absolutely, even though
mine
it's
already has.
like the other one, it does support magnetic charging like the Pencil 2. All right. This is it's gonna fall off, and you're gonna need to find it. And it's the first one that is supported by Apple Find My, which I think is awesome.
Yep.
Great.
I also second that like I don't have the vaunted iPad that Larry has. I have the previous generation iPad Pro and the Apple Pencil. And one of the first things I did was buy a case that accommodates the pencil. And guess how many times I've lost the pencil since then?
None.
Yes.
None,
Yep.
He says.
Yep.
Which is
it's just
cool.
It's the way it's designed is it still can sit where it needs to charge. So I mean I just pop it in there, it never falls out.
Oh, there you go, man.
So
there you go. Good stuff. All right, kids. Well, that is the show. This has been the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 91. Chris S. is a Toys R Us kid. Recorded live Sunday, May 26th, 2024, live from iTechGear Central. For Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin, Mr. Chris Gavula, and Brother Joel McLaughlin, I want to say, hey, we will see you next time.